Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So this is a 2 hours long React crash course for beginners. And in this video, we are going to build a React project from scratch. Let me show you the topics that we are going to learn in this video. So we are going to learn about the basics of React, how we create the React application. Then we will learn about the components, the class components, and the functional components. Then we are also going to know that how we write the JSX in our components. Then we will learn about the props and states. After that, we are going to learn about the use state and use effect React hooks, and we will see how the component lifecycle works. Then we will see about the conditional rendering, and we will see how we can form the list and keys. Then we will learn about the basic form handling. After that, we will see about the project structure. What is a good project structure for a React application? Then we are going to include the React routing so that we can navigate among the pages. And we will also see how to navigate from one page to another page programmatically. Then we are going to set up a JSON server, and that is going to give us the fake APIs. We can use these fake APIs, and we will use the AXIOS package to call the APIs in our React project. We are going to learn about the CRUD operations, and we are going to build a small functionality of a search filter in our application that will filter out the results. And we are going to cover a lot of React hooks. So there's a ton of topics that we are going to learn in this video. You can also use the timeline in the description below so that you can jump to any topic directly. So if this sounds interesting, then stick around. Also, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. So let's get started. So the first thing what we need is we need to have Node.js installed on our machine. So if you don't have Node.js installed, quickly install the Node.js from the official website. So this is the official website of the Node.js. You can click on the current version and you can download the installer, and you just need to click next, 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 and you will be able to install Node.js on your machine. So if you need any help in the installation part, then I have a video on it. You can click on the card above and jump to it directly. So once you have installed the Node.js, you can go to the terminal. So right now I'm going to my terminal, and I can simply type node-v, and it's going to give me the version of the Node.js that is installed. All right, so now we have installed the Node.js. The next thing we need to do is we need to create a React app. And to create the React app, let's go to the GitHub page of React app. So this is the GitHub page of the React app. And if we scroll down, then we will see that how we can actually create the React app. So we are going to use npx create React app and the app name. So let's create a React app. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write npx create React app, and I'm going to name as contact app and hit enter. And this is going to take some time to initialize and download all the dependencies. So we'll take a pause here. All right, so now our app is created, and let's see actually what all happens when we run the npx create React app. So when we actually run the create React app, it actually downloads a lot of dependencies, and we can see here that 1904 packages have been added as the dependencies for this project. And it also gives you in the last that what all the commands you can use directly. So to start the development server, we can use npm start. And in order to build our application for a production deployment, we can run the npm run build, and that is going to minify all our files. And if we want to run the test cases, then we can use the npm. Then we have the npm run eject, which we don't use generally much. And now let's start this application. So to start the application, we are going to go to the directory. So I am in the contact app directory, and then I'm going to write npm start. And this is going to start our development environment on a localhost port 3000 by default. So let's wait for it. Meanwhile, let's see the folder structure of the application. So we have the node modules where all our dependencies are. Then we have a public folder. Then we have a source folder. This source folder is the folder where we are going to write all our application code. We have a gitignore file to ignore the files and folders. Then we have the package JSON. This package JSON is containing all the dependencies. And you can also see the scripts which you can run. So you can run the npm start, build, test, eject. Then this is the README file of the project. Let's go to the public folder. So in the public folder, we have the fav icon, the index.html. And in the index.html, you will see that we have only one div with an ID of root. So all our application, which we are going to create through React, is going to be in this root div. Then we have some images which we got by default with the project. We have a manifest file and robots.txt, which we don't want for this project. In the source file, if we see that we have the app.js, the main is the index.js, which is the starting point of this application. So in the index.js, you will see that we have a React and React DOM library imported. And here the React DOM.render, which is actually going to render our application in the root div which we saw in the index.html. So if you see that we are very familiar with this code, get element by ID, so we have took that root element reference, and in that root element reference we are actually embedding this app component. Next we have the app.js, which is the default functional component. This is a functional component which is created from the React project, and we have the CSS for the CSS file. All right, so our development server is started. Now let's go to the development server, and this is the initial app component which we are seeing on the screen. So this is how we can run the application. Now let's go and delete all the default stuff because we are going to create everything from scratch. So I will go to the public folder. I'm going to remove all these files we don't want. So I'm going to delete them. Okay, and here we don't want this app test. We don't, because we are not doing anything with the tests at the moment. And then we are going to remove all these files. All right, so let's delete them. And let's go to app.js. We don't want all this stuff. So let's remove these. We don't have CSS file anymore. All right, and then what we are going to do is we are going to create our own folder structure. So what we are going to create multiple components. So let's create a directory of components that will contain all our components. All right, and we are also going to have some images. So I'm going to create one more directory for images. So that will have images. All right, and all our components will be in this component file. So let's go and create some components. So we have the header component. So I'm going to go here and first create the header component. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to write a header.js. So this is our header component. And then we need a add contact.js. Then we need the contact list. So I'm going to create the contact list.js. Then I'm going to create the contact card. So I'm going to create this contact card.js. All right, and we already have the app.js. So let's move this app.js into our component and also move the CSS into our component. All right, so this is how our folder structure now looks like. We have an index.js file, and then we have the app in our component file. So let's go to the app.js. All right, and we are going to remove this logo. We don't want the logo, and we are going to remove all this stuff. Let's go and return a div, and I'm going to say hello world. All right, and let's save this. Okay, and now let's see how it looks. So if I refresh this page, we can see a hello world. So for this project, we are not going to focus on the CSS. So for the CSS, I'm going to use Semantic UI library. So let's go to the Semantic UI. So this is the Semantic UI official website. You can explore it later on. And I'm going to copy this because I'm going to use the CSS. So I'm going to copy this and we are going to add it in the index.html. So in the index.html, I'm going to remove this manifest and I'm going to add my. All right, let's save it and let's see how it looks now. All right, so the font size is and font family is changed. So that means our semantic UI is working properly. So let me minimize this screen. All right, so we don't want this index.js now to be open. So let's close this. Let's close this as well, and let's close all other components also. So let's understand first what is this components and all about. So a component is a piece of reusable code which you can be reused at any point, and it's an individual piece of code which has its own inputs, which has its own outputs, and it has its own functionality. So this is the app component, and we are returning from the app component a div of hello world. And this looks like an HTML, but it's not an HTML. It is called the JSX, which is a combination of a JavaScript and HTML, because you cannot write an HTML in a JavaScript file, which looks like this. And you can do all this is because we are using the React library. So let me import the React library here. So you can import a React library simply like this. Go to add React. All right, and then what we are going to do, that our application has three components in it. So the first one is the header component. So let's go and import the header. So I'm going to import the header from header. So we have the header. Next, we are going to import the add contact. So let's import the add contact. So I'm going to do add contact from add contact. And the last one we need is the contact list from contact list. So we have imported all these three components, but right now there is nothing in those component files. So what we can do is we are going to actually return. So if we want to return more than one div or more than one element, then we can use this parenthesis, and then we can actually add a div here. All right, and this div will return all those components. So first it's going to return the header component, and you can use this header components as a custom HTML elements, because right now if you see that header, it similarly looks like an HTML element. So you can use it either the self-closing part, or if you want to add some data in it like this, then you can actually do the closing of the element tag. So right now I'm just going to do a self-closing. And then I need to have an add contact. So I'm going to add the add contact. And in the last, we will have the contact list. So let's add the contact list. And you're not going to see anything on the screen at the moment because we don't have anything on them. So let's go and write some code in our header, contact list, and contact. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to open my header.js, my add contact.js, and my contact list. All right. And first we are going to do the same import React from React. All right. And we are going to create another functional component. So I'm going to do a constant header. This will be an function expression. I'm going to use a arrow function, and this is going to return. So let's return the header from. So I'm going to use the semantic UI. So I'm going to use some classes of the semantic UI. So let's create a div with a class name. So you will notice that you cannot use class as a selector here, because class in JavaScript are the classes for the object-oriented programming. So that's why you need to use a class name. So this is a difference between writing a simple HTML and writing a JSX. So I'm going to use some classes here, UI fixed menu. All right, and inside them, I'm going to create another class, and this is going to contain the UI container center. All right, and then I'm going to do an H2, and this H2 will be having my contact manager. All right, so now we have created this functional component and we are getting an error, and that is because we haven't exported this header, and we are using this header in our app.js. So we need to export this. So how we can export this? We can do the export default and the header. All right, so now we have exported the header, and if I refresh my page, then I'm going to see an error. And this is obvious because I don't have these components yet. So I'm going to comment this out for the moment. So if I comment this out, now we can see that we have the header. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to create the add contact, which will have the contact form. So let's go and create the add contact form. So I'm going to go to the add contact, and this time I'm not going to create a functional component. I'm going to create a class component. So you can create the component in both the ways. So either you can use the function or you can use the class. So let me show you how you can do the class component. So I'm going to add the React here. All right. Then in order to create a class component, you just write the class add contact extends React dot component, and this is our class component, and in the end we are going to export this. So I'm going to write export default add contact. All right, and while writing the class component, you cannot simply just write a return, and you need to use a render method. So I'm going to use this render method, and then I'm going to return what I want to return from this render method. So what we want from this render method is we are going to create a form with the name and email ID. So let's create the form. I'm going to use a div with a class name of UI main. So you don't need to worry about all this CSS and the classes. They are coming from the Sematic UI, which is actually not relevant for this video. Then we are going to have the add contact. And after this, we need to create a form. So let's create a form with a class name of UI form. All right. And then we need to create a class name of field. Inside the field we are going to create a label, and this label will be name. Then I'm going to create an input of type text. Name will be name to it. Then let's create a placeholder. So I'm adding a placeholder of name. All right, and then we are going to create another input field. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this and paste this. So let's copy this and let's add it. All right, so now we have both the fields, and let's go and check here. So I'm going to uncomment this out again. And now let's comment only this one. All right. And if I save it, then we can see that we have the add contact name, email. So now we need to have an add button. So let's add the button. So in the end, I'm going to go to the div, and here I'm going to add the button. All right. And for the button, I'm going to use the class name UI button blue, and I'm going to add here. All right. So now we have the button as well. And the next thing we are going to do is we will just create a functional component this time again in the contact list. So let's add the import React from React. So I'm going to write a constant contact list is equals to an arrow function, and then we can export this default contact list. And for now we are just going to return a div with a class name UI cell list, and then I'm going to write here contact list. All right, and now let's uncomment this as well. So now we have the contact list as well. So we have created all the components which we needed. And what we are going to do is we are going to style this app component a little bit. So I'm going to add a class name, and let's add a class name of UI space container. All right, so now we will see that how we can actually render a list in React. So in order to render a list in React, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a list here. So let's have a list of contacts, and this is going to be an array, and it's going to have the field as ID, and I'm going to name as ID1. Then it's going to have a name. I'm going to give name as the page. Then it's going to have an email. I'm going to give email as malvia@gmail.com. All right, and let's create one more list. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add this. Let's make this 2, make this as Nikesh, and let's make this as Nix. All right, so now we have 2 contacts. So in order to pass this contacts in the contact list, so we can use props. So in order to use the props, I'm going to write here as contacts as the property name, and I'm going to pass the prop which I want to pass. So I want to pass my contacts array. So let me add the contacts array. All right, so now I have passed this contact list with a contact as a property and a contact array. And this contacts can be accessed in the context list via props. So if you want to access the props, you have a default parameter here called props. And if I actually do a console.log of these props, then you should be able to see the props. So if I inspect it, all right, and if I expand this, then you can see that we actually get the contacts. And now once we have the context object, we can do anything with the context object. So let's go to the contact list and let's render the list. I'm going to create a function here. So you can create a function and you can do a render contact list. And this function is going to take the props of contacts and we are going to map them. This is going to have a contact, and then we are going to have an arrow function, and inside the contact we are going to return a JSX blocks. So I'm going to create a div with a class name of item. Inside the item I want a div with a class name content. Inside the content, I'm going to create a div with the class name of header. And this is going to have the name. So we have 2 properties, name and the email ID. Sorry, this should be contact.name. So I'm going to do a contact.name. And the other one is div with a contact.email. So this is going to give us the email address as well. All right, and then we also want the trash icon. So let's go and add the trash icon. So I'm going to add the icon here, class name as trash, alternate outline icon. So now we have created this render list function, and now we actually want to render this. So I'm going to copy this and I am actually going to return this from here. So if I hit enter and I add this, so in order to reference this, we are going to add this. So I'm not actually adding this parenthesis because I don't want to execute this function at the moment. So I'm just going to reference the render list. All right, now if I save it, then you can actually see that we get the list. So this is how you can actually create the list and render the list in React. The next thing we are going to do is, it seems that this part is being repeating. We can actually remove this part and we can create a component of this part. So I'm going to go here, and so I already have the contact card, and we are going to move this piece of JSX into our contact card. So let's go and create the contact card first. So I'm going to do an import React from React constant card contact. This is going to be an arrow function. All right, and then we are going to export the default contact card. And this function is going to return the JSX of this card component. So let's add that JSX. So I'm going to do a return here. And inside the return, I'm going to copy this block and I'm going to add this block here. So I have copied this as well. All right. So now we have this contact card. And if we want to add the inline styles, so I'm going to add a style here. And to add the style, you will have the curly braces, and inside the curly braces you are going to have another curly braces which will contain our CSS properties. So I'm going to give a color of red to my trash icon, and I'm also going to give a margin top. So usually when we write the CSS, we write margin hyphen top, but we don't use hyphens while doing the while writing it in the JSX. So we use usually the camel case. So I'm going to write the top, and this top will be 7 pixel. All right, but we don't have this contact name and contact email address. So we have to get these from the contact list, and we are going to use the props again. So I'm going to add the props here. So let me add the props. All right, so I will have to pass the props from the contact list. So let's go to the context list. Let's remove this. We don't want this now. And instead of this, we are going to pass the contact card. All right, and let's import the contact card here. So I'm going to import the contact card from contact card, and we need to pass the contact here. So I'm going to pass the contact, and let's pass the contact. All right, and now we have passed the contact, and we will use this contact in our contact cards. So here we will do one thing. We are going to use a destructuring, so we don't have to repeat every time here props.contact.name, props.contact.email. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write a constant here, and then I'm going to add the ID, the name, and the email, and this will be equals to props.contact. All right, and now we can use this name here directly. So we can use the name here, and we can use the email here. All right, so we are getting an error that contact card is not defined. So let's see what we have done. Oops, I have actually written wrong. It should be contact card. And let's copy this and let's add this. Okay, let's go back here, contact card, contact card. All right, so now we actually render the contact list properly. So now we have the contact card here, and we will do one thing. We have an image here, so let's add the image. So if you want to add the images in the React, so I already have the image here. So let me show you the image. So in the images folder, I have the user.png. So in order to add the user.png here, we are going to import the image first. So let me import the image user from images slash user dot png. All right, and now I'm going to add an image here. So I'm going to add an image tag with a class name, and this image tag will have a class name of UI avatar image, and the source will be the user which we are adding. The source will be the user, and let's give the alt tag of user, and then let's close the tag. All right, and if I save it, then you will see that you have a proper image now and our list properly, and we have the trash icon as well. So the next thing we are going to do is we are now going to build the functionality. Right now we have only set the components and placed all the components. Now we are going to actually build the functionality. So what we are going to do, first we are not going to use these two static lists. So we will go to the app component. All right, and in the app component, I will actually going to remove this. And instead of this, we are going to make use of a state. So if we are using a functional component, then we are going to make use of React hooks. I'm going to add here useState. So this is a React hook. In order to use the states in our functional component, we use the React hook. So in the React hook, how you can do is I'm going to create a constant. I will have the contacts and set context, and this will be equals to use state, and this will be the what will be the initial value of your contacts. So initially the contacts will be an empty array. So let me add an empty array here. So now we have created the state of this contacts, and what we want is if we add anything, the name and the email, and if we click on the add, we actually want to add the contacts in the contacts. So what we are going to do, we are going to go to the add contacts, and in the add context we are actually going to create the state, and this state will be the class state. We are not going to use any React hook in the class component. We can actually create a state directly, and we are going to have an object, and this state will have the name. So we have two fields, name and email. So I'm going to add the name and email. And in the input, what we can do is that we're going to write an event on change. So let me add an on change. And this on change, we have an arrow function. So this is going to return an event. And I'm going to update the state, do the set state. So if you want to update the state, you use the set state. And inside the set state, I'm going to have the name, and the value of name will be the event.target.value. All right, and we are going to use same state as a value in the input. So I'm going to use a value here, and this value will be this dot state dot name. All right, and we are going to do the same thing in our email as well. So let's go to the email and add the same thing here. And we are just going to change the state as email, and this will be get changed as email. And now when we actually click on the add, we need to submit this form. So for the form, well, let's go here, and so I'm going to write a on submit, and on submit I'm going to call a function this dot add. So right now we don't have this add function, so I'm going to create a function add, an arrow function. All right, and I'm going to use event dot prevent default because I'm using a button and I don't want my page to get refreshed. So I'm using a prevent default, and I'm going to do that if this dot state dot name is equal to equals if it's empty, and this dot state dot email if this is equals to empty, then I'm going to do an alert, and this alert will say all the fields are mandatory, and we are going to return this function. But if it's not, let me console.log. So if I do a console.log of this dot state, let's see what we have. So I'm going to do an inspect here. All right, so if I write the page here, and I'm going to add the page at the rate gmail.com, and if I click on the add, then I actually get the object here. But I need to pass this object to my app component, because my app component is the one which will actually going to add this contact into the contacts array. So we saw that if we want to pass a data from a parent to a child, we use the props. But if we want to pass something from a child to the parent, we can actually use the props. So we are actually going to pass a handler here. So I can pass a function as an prop. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a add contact handler will be equals to add contact handler. So let me add the add contact handler. And once I have the handler, I need to define this function. So I'm going to write constant handler is equals to, and this is going to get a contact from the add contact component. This will be an arrow function, and I'm just going to do a console.log contact. All right. And now let's go and add this in here. Now the handler which we pass from the app component, we can use that handler as prop. So this dot prop dot add contact handler, and we can pass the state here because our state contains the name and email ID. So now if I add the page here and test, and if I click, then I can see that I can get my object in the app.js as well. So this is what we wanted. But what we want that once we actually click on the ad, we want to clear this fields. So to clear the field, what we will do, we are going to set the state. So this dot set state, and we are going to clear the name and email. So let's clear the name and email and save it. And let's remove this console log as well. All right. And now if I pass the page and test the page, and if I click, then all right. So I added the name as empty and it still got submitted. So this should become or. We don't want any of the field to be empty. So now if I add the page and if I add test and if I click, then I get the object in the app.js and my fields are also cleared. So this is what we wanted. Now we have passed the fields. Now we need to add these fields into our contact state. So if I go here, I get the contacts here and I'm going to do a set contacts. And when you do a set contacts, you never directly manipulate the contacts. You always use set contacts to update the state. So you never directly update the state with this contact. You have to use the set contact. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take all the previous state which I was there in the context. So I'm going to use a rest. So I'm going to use contacts and then I want to add the new contacts. So to add the new contact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to simply write the contacts. All right, so now we have set the state. So this is an array. So I have to add the array. All right, and now let's add the page and test. And if I click it, then I can see that I can actually add it. So if I add another one, then I can actually add it. But if I refresh it, then you will see that these list gets, we are not persisting the data. So in order to persist the data, we are actually going to use the local storage. So for using the local storage, I'm going to use one more React hook, which is the use effect. And what this use effect do is actually whenever the value actually changes, the use effect help us to render the component again. So I'm going to use the use effect, and inside the use effect it actually takes a arrow function, and here you are going to add the dependency. So for us it's the contacts, so I'm going to add the contacts here. All right, oops, I added a use effect. Yep. All right, and inside this what I'm going to do, we are actually going to add this in the local storage. So I'm going to use local storage dot set item, and inside the set item I need to have a key. So let me add a key here, constant lo local underscore storage underscore key, and this key will be equals to, so let's add the contacts here. All right, so I'm going to use the key now here. So I'm going to add the local storage key contact, and I'm going to do the JSON dot stringify the contacts. All right, so now we have stored it in the local storage, and now let's go and inspect that whether we are able to store it in the local storage or not. So I'm going to go to the application tab, and inside the application I'm going to go to the context. So right now I can see the context is empty. So let's add the page here and click. So as soon as I click it, then you will be able to see that the data is being entered into the local storage. Now we also want that when we actually refresh the page, we want grab the information from the local storage and display it. So for that we are going to use one more use effect. So let me copy this, and I'm going to add the one more use effect, and this will become the get item, and we are only going to get the item of the contacts. And after getting the data from the local storage, I need to store it into a variable. So let me store it into a variable. So I'm going to do a contacts. Okay. And I need to parse this string. So let me add a JSON dot parse, and this is going to parse the string. All right, so now I have retrieved the data back from the local storage. Now I have to set the state of set context. So let me add the set context, and inside the set context, I'm going to use the retrieve context. And I only want to do this if the retrieve contact is available. So I'm going to add here retrieve contacts. This will be an empty array. All right, so now let's refresh it and let's go to the console. All right, we don't have anything, and now let's add it. So I'm going to add the page test, and I click, it gets added. Let me add the other one. If I click, it gets added, and let me refresh it. So when I refresh it, I still able to retrieve it. So that means our use effects for storing and retrieving is working very well. All right, so we have done the addition, we have done this. Now the only thing we need is we want to delete the contact. So if I want to delete the contact, what I want the ID of the contact. And right now our contact is not having any ID. So let's go and inspect. At each child in the list should have a unique key. And we don't have the unique key because right now we are only having name and email, which is not the unique. So what we are going to do, we are going to use a package to generate the UUID. So I'm going to do cd contact app, and I'm going to install the npm install UUID v4. And this is going to give us the unique ID for each of our contact. Right, so our package is installed, and now let's import the UUID. So I'm going to do an import, and we are going to use the UUID from UUID version 4, and we are going to use it. We actually add the data. So this is here what we are going to do. We are going to create an object, and inside the object I will have the UUID. All right, and then I need the name and the email. So I'm just going to use the REST operator, and I'm going to use the contacts. All right, and now if I refresh it, everything is still works the same. So now we are actually going to delete the contact based on this ID. So let's write the delete function. So I'm going to write here constant remove contact handler, and this is actually going to get an ID, and then based on the ID we are going to create the copy of the contacts first. So let me create the copy of contact list, and then once we get the copy we are going to filter out the contacts. So I'm going to do contacts dot filter, and this is going to have a individual contact. All right, and then we are going to do a return contact dot id is not equals to id. All right, and now I have the new contact list, and now I'm going to change the contacts state. So let's do the set state new contact list. All right, and now I have to pass this handler to the contact list. So I'm going to pass the handler here. So I'm going to give a property name as get contact ID, and this contact ID will take my handler. All right, so in the contact list, we are going to create the function. So I'm going to use the delete contact handler. So in order to get the ID is available inside the contact card. So inside the contact card, we have this icon, and on this icon, we can actually write a click handler. So I'm going to do on click. So when you actually click, what you are going to do, you're going to run an arrow function, and this arrow function is going to take a prop of click handler, and with the prop it's going to pass the ID because it has the access to the ID. Now we have to pass this click handler, and this click handler can be passed from the contacts. So let's go here and add the handler. So click handler will be equals to the, we need to pass this here. So now we are passing the click handler from the inner child to its parent, and then from parent to its parent, which is the contact card. It will give the ID to the contact list. From the contact list is going to give the ID to the app.js. So there is a better way of doing it, but for now, let's stick to the basic part, how we can do these stuffs. Let me write this contact handler. So this is going to get the ID from the contact card. All right, and once we get the ID, what we are going to do, we are actually going to use the props dot get contact ID and pass the ID. All right, so from the app.js, we have passed the contact ID as a property. So this contact ID as a property is going to get the ID from the delete contact handler, and this delete contact handler we have actually passed to the click handler, which is goes to the contact ID. All right, and now if I save it, then if I click here, then I should be able to get it, and it's actually deleting everything. So let me refresh it. All right, and let me add a new. So there is something wrong, and let's go and inspect it. Right, so if I go here and I see, then yeah, one thing we need to do is we actually need to add the key here. So let's add the key, and this key will be equals to contact.id. All right, and let's refresh it and let's try it again. So I'm going to add the page. So something is wrong with the structure. So let's go here and make the structure correct. So this should be contact. All right. And now if I refresh it, then let's add another one test. And if I click it, I'm able to add. Let's add one more, mike@gmail.com. So if I click it, then it's going to add another one. And if we click on it, we can actually going to delete. And if we refresh it, we can going to retrieve it. So this app was actually simple in terms of the functionality, but the concepts which we have used is very important. We have used a lot of React concepts. We have used hooks, we have used states, we have used functional component, class component, style the React JSX. We know how to use the local storages, how to retrieve the data back. All right, guys. So this is the application which we built in our last video, which was the React fundamentals. And we can see that we have all the components are listed on the same page, which is on the localhost 3000. We have the header component, we have the add contact component, and we have the contact list component. But now what we want, that we don't want all the components to be listed on the same route, which is the localhost 3000. We want different routes and different URLs for our different components. I want that when I go to localhost 3000/add, then I should be able to see my add component. And when I visit just the localhost 3000, I should only be able to see the contact list, where I should have a button called add contact. And when I click on the add contact, I should be able to go to the localhost 3000/add to the add contact page. So for this, we need to use the React router. And the React router actually helps us to navigate between different components, helps us to change the browser URL, modifies the browser history, and maintains our page UI state without refreshing the browser. So to do this routing, we need to use a package called React Router DOM. So to install the React Router DOM package, I will go to the terminal and open new terminal. Then I'm going to go to my contact app and I'm going to write npm install react router -dom save, and let's hit enter. And this is going to install the React Router DOM package. So meanwhile, let's go to our application code, and what we had, we have a components folder. Inside the components folder, we had the app.js. And if we go to the app.js, then let's minimize this. Then we can see that here we have all the components one after the another. And this is where we are going to apply the routing. All right, so now our React Router DOM package is installed successfully. So if we go to the package JSON, then we can actually see that we have the React Router DOM dependency. And now what we are going to do, we will go to our app.js and we are going to import the React Router DOM. So from the React Router DOM, I need the browser router. So I'm going to write browser router and I'm going to give an alias as router. So I'm going to give an alias as router. The next thing I will need is the switch. I'm going to explain you each why we are importing this router switch. And the last thing we need is the route. So let's go and import the route. And all this are coming from React Router DOM. All right, so now we have imported whatever we needed. And the next thing we need to do is first we are going to set the router. So in order to set the router, you just use the router. All right. And now inside this router, you need to add your components which you want to be routed. So I'm going to add all the three components first. So I'm going to cut this, paste this here. All right, now I have all the three components inside the router, but I don't want my header to be have a different route. My header should be constant throughout the application. So I'm going to exclude this header, and then I'm going to add the routes. So to add the route, I will do the route, and the route has a prop which is called the path, where we can specify that what URL we want. So if I want to go to the add component, my URL should be the localhost 3000/add. And when I actually go to this path, what component you want to load. So for me, I want to load my add contact component. So let me add the add contact component. And for time being, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to just comment this out, and I will comment this as well. And then I will going to add one more route, which will be the slash, which will be by default the home. And when I go to the home, I just need to have the contact list. All right. And as soon as I add the contact list, I'm actually going to get an error because this contact list component is expecting some props. So for that, what we can do for now, if I go here and this function, the map is not able to find the contacts. So for now, what we can do, I'm just going to remove this, and I'm going to add a constant as contacts, and this is going to have the ID. So let me have an ID as 1, then I'm going to have a name. So this is going to be the page, and then I'm going to have an email, and this is going to be cs@gmail.com. And we are doing this just for now. So now as soon as I save it, you can see that on the home page, I only have the contact list now. And if I want to go to the add, then I can actually change this add, and this is going to give me the add contact. But one thing you will be noticing here, that when I go to the slash add, why I am seeing the contact list. So how it works, so first it checks this path. So in the add contact also, you will see that there is a slash path. So first it will look for the slash add, and it will take you to the contact, add contact. But then in the next path also, it will search for the slash, and you will see that there is a slash. So it just matches the slash, and it gives me the contact list. But if you want to do that, it should only go as soon as it matches a path. It should not go and look for the other paths. So for that, what we can do, we can actually write the switch. So the switch will do one thing, that it's only going to find the match. As soon as it finds the match, it will not go and search for the other routes. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to add this here. All right. And now if I save it, then I actually misspelled the switch. Switch. All right. And let me change this switch here. All right. And now if I save it, then you will see that I am not able to see the contact list on my add contact. And if I just go on the slash, then I will be see the contact list. But there is a problem. The problem is that if I just remove this, and if I add it above, then you will see that the contact list works fine. But if I go to the add, then in slash add also, I'm able to see the contact list. So in both the cases, I am seeing the contact list. And this is because the switch will match only the first route. If it matches the first route, it will not go and check for the other route. So that's the reason is if we go to the slash add, it actually matches this slash, and on the slash we have the contact list. So to solve this problem, we can actually add a prop, and which is called the exact, and this exact will match the exact path. So now if I save it, then you will see that it will match the exact path. That does it has the only slash? No, but it doesn't have only slash, it has slash add. So that's why I get the add contact. And if I go to my home page, then it's going to give me the contact list. So that's how it actually works. So the next thing we are going to do is that on the contact list, I need a button to go to the add contact because I don't want to go to my URL and manipulate the URL and go to that component. So let's add a button here. So I'm going to go to the contact list, and inside the contact list, I'm going to add a button here, and I'm going to add a button, and this button will say add contact, and let's add a class name. So I'm going to add a class of UI button blue right. All right. And if I save it, then you can see that I have a add contact. But now what I want, if I click on it, I should be able to go to the slash add. So in order to do that, we need to import one thing, and that is the link from the React Router DOM. So I'm going to click here, import. And from the import, I'm going to do the import of a link, and this will be from the React Router DOM. So we add these brackets here, and that is because that this link component is not a default exported component. When there is a component which is a export default component name, in that case, you don't need to add the mustache or the brackets. And that is where you can see that for the contact card, we did not add any curly braces. But for the link, we need to add the curly braces because the link is not a default exported component. So what we can do, we have imported the link, and we can actually add this link component here. And I will add this inside the link component. So I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to add this here. All right. And inside the link, you can actually pass the prop, which is the to. And for the to, I can give the value as slash add, that it want to go to the slash add route. And if I save it, then you will be able to see that if I click on the add contact, I can go to the add contact component. So now we can actually go back here, and we can go back and forth. So if I go to the add contact, and now let's try to add a contact. So I'm going to add a contact as test, and this will be test@gmail.com. And if I click on the add, then you will notice that we get an error, and that is because we are not actually passing the props from our route. So if I go back on app.js, and you will notice that right now we only have the component, but the real was we need to have a prop of add contact handler. So now the question here is, how do we add the props when we actually have a component in the route? So the one way of passing the props in the routed component is that inside this component, we are going to have an arrow function. So I'm going to add an arrow function, and inside the arrow function, I'm going to make this changes. And now I can actually pass the prop. The prop name was add contact handler. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to add this here. All right. So this is one of the way, and we can do the same thing for the other one. So let me add the same thing for the contact list. So for the contact list, I'm going to have this arrow function, and inside the contact list, I'm actually going to pass this information. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to add this here. All right. And now we can see that we have the contact list component, and we are able to pass the props as well. So I will go here, and I will remove this because we don't want this. Now we are able to pass, and this will become back the props dot contact. All right. And now let's give a try. So if I go back, then you will see that I can see my contact list, which is coming from the local storage. If I click on the add contact, and let's add one new contact. So I'm going to write a new contact, and this will be new@gmail.com. And if I click on the add, then something is happening. The contact is being stored in the local storage, but the ideal case should be that we should be redirected back to our contact list so that we can see that the newly added contact, we are able to see it on the list or not. But if I go back, then you will see that my contact is being added. But there is one problem with this approach. And the problem is this: what happens when you actually add a component name inside the component, and React internally uses react.createElement. in order to create the component. But what happens when you pass it inside an anonymous function? So each time when we visit the route or the URL, then each time the anonymous function will get executed, and each time we will be creating the create element. And that is actually going to do a performance issue, because we just want to update the component which is created once. We don't want to recreate the component every time. So that's why we are not going to use this approach to pass the props. Instead of this, there is another prop which is the render, and we are going to use the render in the route. So let me show you what actually I'm trying to say here. So I'm going to remove this first. So let's remove this. All right. And instead of adding the component, I'm going to add another prop which is called the render prop. So inside the render, so the syntax is a little bit weird, but you will be able to get along if you write more and more code. So the first thing is we need to have the props. So I'm going to add here props, and this props will be a arrow function. And then here I can actually do the add contact. All right. And inside the add contact, we are going to destructure the props we have. So let's destructure the props. And after destructuring the props, we can actually add the props which we want to pass. So I'm sorry, we need to pass this one. So let me copy this. And I also made a small mistake. I need to have a contact list here. So let's add a contact list. All right. So now this is a correct approach when you actually want to pass props in your route. So now if I refresh it, then I still see the same result. So that's fine. So we need to change this as well, because we are not going to use this approach to pass the props. So let me remove this, and here I'm going to add the render. All right. And inside the render, we need to have the props. And inside the props, I'm going to add the add contact. All right. And inside this add contact, we are going to destructure the props. So let's destructure the props and pass the props which we want. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this. All right. And now let's remove this because we have the routes properly configured. All right, now if I refresh it and if I click on the add contact, I'm able to see the add contact, and let's add the add contact. So the new contact will be Max, and it will be max@gmail.com. But I'm not going to click on the add, and that is because when I click on the add, I want my contact to be persisted in the local storage, but at the same time, I want to be back on my contact list page. So what we are going to do, we are going to add a programmatically route. The route will happen programmatically. When some event is triggered, the route will happen. So let's go to the add contact. So let's go to the add contact. I'm on the add contact, and where is my, okay, on submit. All right. And here what I'm going to do is here, after we clear the fields, we actually need to go back to our contact list page. So one thing I want to show you before I write any code, I want to console, and I want to do console log this dot props. Let's go to the console log. So I'm going to click on the inspect. I will go to the console log, and inside the console log, if I add something, so let me add max again. So I'm going to add max, and I'm going to click max@gmail.com. And if I click on the add, then you will see that I have some additional information in my props. So I have a history, and if I use this history dot push, I will be able to add a route where actually I want to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this now. All right. And we are actually going to do this dot props dot history dot push, and we can actually add the route which we want to go. So we want to go to the home page, so which is the slash. All right. And now if I save it, then let's do a test3 test@gmail.com. And now if I click on the add, we should be able to add the new contact, and we also should be able to navigate to the contact list or the home. So if I click it, then boom, we are able to come to the contact list. So this is how you can actually do a programmatically navigation from one component to other component. The other thing in the route I want to show you is when actually I click on any of the contact, I need to go to that particular contact page where I can see the details of the contact. So for that, what we will do, let's go first to the contact card. So I'm going to go to the contact card. So I am inside the contact card, and in the contact card, we can see that we have the name and we have the email. And on name and the email, when we actually click on it, we should be able to redirect it to the contact detail page of a particular contact. So what we can do first, we will be importing the link. So let's go and import the link. All right. And this link will be from the React Router DOM. All right. So the next thing we will do that we are going to make this name and the email address clickable. So I will come here and I'm going to add a link here. All right. And then I'm going to add the to prop. So inside the to, what I need to have is I'm going to do an equal. All right. And here I'm going to add the link. So let me cut this. Let me add it below here. All right. So when I click on a particular contact, I need to go to the contact detail page. So for that, I will have a route. So I'm going to use a backtick and I need to go to a contact slash the ID of a particular contact. So we have the ID. So I'm going to do an ID here. So we already have the ID for each contact. So, all right, now if I save it, then if I hover it, then you will see that if I click on anyone, then you will see that we actually have a URL. So if I, let me maximize this a little bit. So you will see that we have a URL, which is the contact, and there is the ID. But right now we haven't specified that when actually it goes to that route, what component should get load. So we are going to create a new component called contact details. But for now, if I click on this contact, then you will see that we have a different route. If I click on this, we have a different route. So we have different route for each of our contacts. And now we need to create a contact detail page where we can actually see the detail of the particular contact. So this is how you can actually add the ID. So now let's create a new component. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to create new, and I'm going to add the contact detail.js. All right. And inside the contact detail.js, I will just going to do a copy paste of this so that we don't waste time. All right. And here I am going to remove all this. All right. And we don't have any props at the moment. So let me remove this prop and we will have an image. So if I go to the image, then we are using the JPG image. So let me change this to JPG. So this will become JPG. All right. And what we are going to return from here is a JSX. So let me add a JSX quickly. So we have a div with the class name of main, and all these classes are coming from the Sematic UI. So we are using the Sematic UI if in case you have forgot. So I'm going to add a div with the class name of UI card centered. All right, and we are going to create a card. Then I'm going to have a class name and we are going to use an image. So let's add an image. Inside this, I'm going to add an image src, and that will contain an alt tag of a user. So let me add a user here, and we have already imported the image. So after the image, I need to have a div with a class name of content. All right, inside the content, I need a div with the class name of header, and this is going to have the name as the page. Let's give a hard-coded value. Inside that, I need in another div, and that will contain the description. and I'm going to give as cs.thepage@gmail.com. All right, and now let's save it. And now we have added this component, so we need to add this component into our route. So let's go to the app.js, and inside the app.js we are going to add this as a route. So before adding the route, we need to import the component. So let's go and import our contact detail. So I guess we haven't exported the contact details. So let's go and export the contact detail. So let's change this to detail and change this to detail. All right, and now we can actually export it. So let's go here and export it from contact detail. All right, and now we can use it in the route. So if this is the route, then adding a new route here, which is the route, the path will be slash contact slash, and we were passing the ID. So if I go to the contact card, then you will see that we have an ID here. So we can actually refer this ID as colon ID. All right, and when we go to that particular path, we need to have our route, and this route will be the contact details. So let me copy this and let me add this. All right. And now let's try. And if I click on the page, then I can see that I have a contact detail. But if I go back and if I click on Daniel Mentor, then you will see that the name is still the page, which is incorrect. So what we need to do actually is we need to pass the information of a contact to the contact detail page. So right now we are in the contact card, which is this. From here, we need to pass the information of the contact so that we can show this information in the contact details. So how we can actually pass the information? So what we can do is inside this link, what we will do is right now I will remove this first, or I will just cut it. All right. So this is R2, and here we need to pass two things. First, we need to pass the path, and the next thing we need to pass the data as well. So what we will do, we are going to create an object inside this, and we have the couple of properties which we can use. The first one we will use is the path name. So inside the path name, I can actually give the path name, which is the contact slash ID. But apart from the path name, I can actually give the state as a property. And inside the state, what we can do is we can actually pass the information which we want to pass to the contact detail page. So I need to pass a contact, and this value will be the props.contact, because this props.contact contains the name, ID, and email of my contact. So I can pass this props.contact to this contact. All right. And if I save it, then now let's go to the contact details, and we have a props here. So what I'm going to do is the first thing I want to show you that what information we are getting in this props. So let's go and do a console.log, and let's write a props. All right. And if I go and inspect, then let's go back first. All right. Go to the inspect element. And now if I click on this Daniel, then we have a object, and this object is printed from the line 6, which is the console log.props. So if we go here and if we see that inside the location, you can see that there is a key called states. So if you can't see, I will just zoom it out. There is a key called states. All right. And in this state, we can actually see the contact which we actually passed. And this is what we wanted in order to display the information of a contact. So we can make use of this information and we can display it. So let's go back here. And now we know that we get the information in this prop, and let's destructure the information which we want. We want the name, we want the email, and we can get these both information from props dot location dot state dot contact. All right. And now let's copy this and add the name here. Okay. And we can actually add the email here. So let's add the email. All right, I have saved it, and we will do one more thing. We will be creating a button here so that from the contact detail page we can go back to our contact list. So let's go and create a button. So I'm going to create a div with a class name, and the class name will be the center div. All right, and inside that I'm going to create a button, and the button will be having back to contact list. And let's give a classes to the button. So I'm going to give a class name of UI button blue center. All right. And now if I save it, then you can see I can get the back to contact list. But if we click it, nothing is going to happen. And we know what to do here. We are going to make use of this link again. So I'm going to add the link here. Link, and inside this link we are going to have the button. So let me cut this. Let me add this button here, and we can do the to, and inside the to we want to go to the slash. All right, and let's save it. So now if I click on the back to contact list, I should be able to go back to the contact list. And if I click on Mike, I can see here Mike and his email ID. If I click on Max, I can see Max and Max email ID. If I want to delete it, I can delete it. If I want to add a new contact, let's add a new contact as Max again. And this will become max@gmail.com. If I click on add, I can see the new is added. So you can see that this is how easy it is. We are navigating between different components, and it's so quick and so fast because the page is not getting refreshed. And I have a little assignment for you that when you click on the delete, you should actually go to a new page, which should be /delete, and there you can show a message that are you sure you want to delete a page, okay or no. If you click on the OK, then the contact should get deleted because delete functionality is already working. You just need to move that piece and take it to the new page. When you click on the OK, you should be able to delete it, and you should be able to get back to the contact list page. So all this information is already there in this tutorial, and you just need to do a little bit of create a new component for delete and then do the functionality. So this is an assignment for you, but don't worry, if you get any problem or you get stuck anywhere, you can put it in the comments. I'm going to help you immediately. All right, guys, so I am using the same application code which we have built in our previous videos, the React fundamentals and React router. If you are new and you have missed the previous videos, then I recommend you to watch that first. So what we are going to do first, we are going to set up a JSON server so that we can have our fake APIs. So let me take you the GitHub page of the JSON server. So this is the GitHub page of the JSON server, and here you can see that the JSON server follows the RESTful API conventions. So I'm going to explain you what the RESTful API convention is a little bit so that you can have a good idea. And then you can see that my JSON server, from here you can actually they have the steps to create the JSON server. So we need to do an npm install of a JSON server, and then we need to just create a db.json file and the resource which we want. So let's go to our Visual Studio Code and let's do the setup. So I am in the Visual Studio Code, and first we will create a new folder, and I'm going to name it as Server API. And then let's go to the terminal, and from the terminal I'm going to go to the Server API, and we will do an npm init -es to create the package.json file. So this is going to create the package.json file. And now if we see in the package.json file, we have the default information about the package.json. So let's install the JSON server. So I'm going to do npm install -save JSON-server. And this is going to take some while. So meanwhile, let's understand the REST API convention. So let me show you a slide that will help you to understand the REST convention very easily. So we are going to create a resource with the name of contacts. And on this resource, we can actually do the CRUD operations. We can create a new resource, we can update a resource, we can delete a resource, or we can fetch the resources. So this is what the JSON server follows the RESTful API convention. All right, so now our JSON server is installed, and next thing we will do is we are going to create a file called db.json. So inside the db.json, we are going to create our resource, which will be a JSON object. So if you don't know about JSON, I have a complete crash course on JSON. I will add the link in the description, or you can click on the card above and jump to it directly. So the name of our resource will be contacts. So let's go and add the contacts, and this will be an array. So what we are going to do, let's start our application first. Let's go to the terminal, and I have already started, I guess. So yeah, my application is already started. So let's go and visit the application on the browser. All right, so this is our application, and let me adjust the screens. All right, so now I have adjusted the screen, and right now what we are doing is if we are adding any of the contact, then the contact is being stored in the local storage. So we will go to inspect it, and we are going to go to the application, and from the application, I'm just going to copy this, and then I'm going to use this in the JSON server. So if I want to use it here, I'm going to add this here, and I will just remove this, and I'm going to remove this. All right, so we have initially added some data in our contacts array, which we can use it in the React application. So we need to do one more thing. We actually want to go to the scripts, and we are going to remove this. And instead of this, we are going to add a start here, and the value of the start will be JSON server hyphen p, and then we are going to give a port number, and we will write hyphen w so that we can watch our db.json file whenever there is a changes. All right, now I have saved it, and we need to do one thing. We need to start our JSON server. So let's go here, and let's go to cd server API, and now we are going to do npm start, and this is going to start our JSON server. So let the JSON server get start. So it's already started at localhost uh, 3006, and let's go and visit it. All right, so we can see the JSON server is started, and if I click on the context, I can see my two records. So now what we need to do is we need to make changes in our React application so that we can fetch the data from the JSON server and not from the local storage. So I'm going to go to the app.js. So this is the app.js. I'm going to minimize this. All right, so now we are in the app.js, and we can see that here we actually retrieve the context from the local storage. So before we make any changes, we need to install the AXIOS. So let's go to the terminal and install the AXIOS. Cd contact app, and I'm going to do npm install hyphen save AXIOS. So this is going to install the AXIOS, and after that we can use the AXIOS. So meanwhile it gets installed, I'm going to create a new directory here, and I'm going to name the directory as API. And inside this, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to name it as contacts.js. So this file will be our Axios base file. So I'm going to import Axios from Axios. All right. And here we are going to do an export default Axios dot create, and this create will take an object, and inside the object we are going to define our base URL. So our base URL, we can get it from this localhost 3006. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to add this here. All right, and now our Axios is installed. So now we can make changes in our application. So I will go to the app.js, and inside the app.js, this is the code where we actually retrieve our data from the local storage. So I'm going to comment this out, and instead of this, what I will do, I will first create a function which will be actually used for the fetching of the data. So I will write here, before that, let's import the API. So I'm going to import API from /API/contacts. All right, so now we have imported the APIs, and let's write the retrieve contacts. So this function will actually retrieve the contacts. I'm going to write constant retrieve contacts. This will be equals to an arrow function. And then I'm going to do a constant. This is going to give me a response, and I'm going to use the API dot get. And this will be a get call. So for the get call, I'm going to do the slash contacts. And we are going to use the async and await because we want this to be an asynchronous mode, and it should be returning a promise. So if you don't know about async, await, and how to use them, then I have a video on it. I will add the link in the description, or you can click on the card above. So I'm going to add an async keyword here, and I'm going to add await here. All right. And this, we are going to return the response from here. So let's return the response from here. All right, and this will get the data in the response dot data, and I will remove this because we are going to use it in the use effect. So now let's go to the use effect, and in this use effect we are going to write the, so we have actually returned the retrieve contact function outside the use effect so that it can be reusable for other purposes as well. So now here what I will do, I'm going to create a constant, and I'm going to write get all contacts, and this will be an async and arrow function, and this is going to return all contacts, and these contacts will be equal to await retrieve. I'm going to call the retrieve contact function here, and then if this has the contacts, then I need to update the state. So we are doing the same thing, but in this case we are fetching the data from the server and not from the local storage. So similarly we are going to do the set contacts, and we are going to add the all contacts. All right, and now if I save it, then I should be able to fetch the data, but I'm not able to fetch the data because I need to call this function. So let's call this function. All right, and now if I save it, then I should be able to get the data. So now this data we are fetching it from the API and not from the local storage. So if I go and I delete the local storage, all right, now I have deleted the local storage, but I still able to fetch the data because we are getting this data from the API, and we still see the data here, and that is because that we are using the set item. So if I comment this out, then we will no longer be able to see it. So I will remove this. And now if I refresh it, then we don't have any data in our local storage. So let's go to the network tab and see the API. All right. So now if I refresh it, then we see that we have the contacts. Now let's do and write the code for the add contact so that we can make a create operation. So I will go to the add contacts, and inside the add contact, I already get the contact. And here what I'm going to do, I am simply going to create a new request first. So I'm going to create a request, and inside the request, I'm going to have the ID. So I will have the ID which will be generated from the UUID utility. All right, and then we are going to have the contact. So let's have the contact here. So I'm doing the destructuring of the contact. So this is the same thing I am doing it, but I'm keeping this in a separate constant variable, which is a request. And after that, I will create the API call. So I'm going to do a constant, which will give me a response, and I will write the API dot post. So this is the AXIOS post call, and we know the URL. So the URL will still be the contacts as it's a REST convention. So we have the same resource. And the second parameter will be the request body which you want to send. So I'm going to add the request here. And we will be using the async await. So I'm going to add async here, and I will add the await here. All right. And once we receive the data, which is the response, we have to set this response in our state because our state will get changed. So I'm going to copy this, and I will add the state here. So this response will be the new state. So now let's save it and let's try to add something. So I'm going to add Amit. And here I'm going to add Amit at the Gmail. And if I click on add, then I am not getting the data. So that means something is wrong. So if we see here, all right, so we actually made a mistake. So this should be data here, response dot data. And if I do the response dot data, so let's add a new one. So I'm going to add this time as Mike and Mike, and if I click, then I will be able to see the Mike John. And why we added this response dot data, we can see actually do a console dot log, and we can log the response here. So let's log the response, go here and do the inspect element in the console. Let's clear the console, and I'm going to add as max, and this will be max. And if I click on add, then oops, I made a mistake. This response should be after the response is being initialized. So now let's go back and go to the add contact, do the inspect element, and now add here max. I'm going to add the max, and let's click on add. So we can see that the actual response is this, and we get the data which is in the response dot data. So this is our data. So we need to add here as a response dot data. All right, so now we have created two operations. The one is the fetch all the data, which is the get call, and other one is the adding a new contact, which is a post call. Let's do the delete one. So for the delete, we have already doing this part here, the remove contact handler, and we just need to do a small slight change to call the API here. Do the async first. So this will be an async. And inside this, we are going to create an await, because when we delete it, we are not getting any response. We are just going to get a status code. So I'm going to do API dot delete this time. And this delete method, I'm going to do the backticks, and this will have the contacts, and we will have the ID. We need to pass the ID which we want to delete. So let me add the ID. All right, and the rest thing will be the same. So if I refresh it and if I do an inspect element, I will go to the network tab. All right, and I'm going to delete the max. So if I click on the max, then you will see that we don't get anything back. But in the status code, we get the status code as 200, and the request method is delete. So our max is deleted. If I want to delete Mike, Mike will get deleted. If I want to delete Amit, Amit will get deleted. And for the last one, which is the update one, so for that we don't have at the moment any functionality to the edit. So let's create the functionality quickly. So the edit will be very similar to the add contact. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste this again, and I will just rename this, and this will become edit. I will remove this. All right, and inside this we are going to change this to edit. So this will become edit, and this will become edit. All right, and then we will change this to update, and we are going to change this to update. All right, we also need to go to the contact card, and inside the contact card we need to add the edit icon. So I'm going to copy this and I will add this again here, and I will change this to edit outline icon, and I will add here a margin so that we can get a space left of 10 pixel. So we want to change the color, so this color will be blue. And when we click on the edit, we need to add a link here, and we are going to pass the same information, because while doing the edit we actually need the ID of the contact which we want to edit. Okay, so we have the, and the path will, we will change the path to edit. So this will be the edit, and we will still need the props so that we can have the ID. So now let's go to the edit contact and make the changes on the edit contact. What I will do, I'm going to create a constructor, and this constructor will have the props, and inside the props we are going to add the super props. All right, so I want that when my edit component get initialized, I need to add the state. I need to change the state. So for that, the data which I pass from this state will be, I can use that as a props. So these props will help us to update the state. So I'm going to do a constant, and I will do the destructuring of ID, name, and email. And this we will get it from the props dot location dot state dot contact. So if you don't know what I am doing, then I would recommend you to watch the prerequisite video of this, which is the React router, because all this part is a part of React router. Let's initialize the state. So the initial value of the state will be, this ID will be equal to the ID which I'm getting from the props. The name should be the name which I'm getting from the props. The email should be the value which I'm getting from the props. And as the ES6, we have the key and the value as same. We can actually eliminate this. We don't want to add this. All right, and let's save this. So now we have added this and we don't have a route actually. So let's go to the app.js and let's add a route here. So I'm going to add a route here. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add a route with an edit, and this will become edit contact. And we are going to pass a handler which will be the update contact. So I'm going to change this to update contact, and this will become update contact. All right, we have the update contact handler, but we need to define the update contact function. So let's go and write the update contact function. So this is the add contact, and here we are going to write the update contact. So I'm going to do constant update contact handler will be equals to an arrow function. All right, so now we have it. And now if I click on the edit, I should be able to go to the edit. So if I click on back again, then if I click on edit, then I should be able to edit, but something is wrong and everything is getting deleted. So let's go back to the contact card, and inside the contact card we can see that we have this function which we just copy pasted from the trash icon. So I don't need to do this one, so I will remove this. All right, and let's save it. And we need to add more contacts, so I'm going to add the contact as Nikesh and add. So we get this. Now if I click on edit, I can see this. If I go back, and I can see this. So we need to add two buttons here. First, the button for the added, this should not be add, this should be update. So let's change this to update. And the second thing we need to do is we need to make this as edit contact. So I'm going to do an edit contact. All right, so now we have the edit and we have the update. So if I click on the update, we are going to get an error because this is the contact handler. So we have to change this contact handler to the one which we passed. So the contact handler which we passed is the update contact handler. So let's copy this and let's add this here. All right. And now we have the update contact handler. This is going to give the state, which will contain the ID, name, and email address, so all the three fields. And then once we are done with it, we are going to clear the fields, and then we are going to go back to our contact list. So if I click on the update now, then it should be able to call this function, which is the update contact handler. So let's write this update contact handler. So this update contact handler will get the state, which is the contact, and let's do it as a sync. All right, and then this will do a response of a wait, and then we are going to do a put call. So this will be a put string literal. So I'm going to write the contact slash, and we need to pass the ID. So this ID will be the contact which we received, and I'm going to do the dot ID. All right. And then what will be the new values? The new values will be in the contact which we have passed. So this will be the new value. So we have taken the ID of this contact here and we have added the contact here, which will be the new values. So once we make the update, the next thing we need to do is we need to actually update the state with the new value. Because if I do a console log, I will do a console log of the response dot data. All right, I'll save it and let's go to the inspect element. Let's clear the console. And now if I click on the update, you will actually see that we make an API call in network request. And this is a put call with the 200, so the successful. And in the console, we see that we get the new updated value, which we have updated in the database. So what we are going to do, we need to update our state with this new value. So to update the state, we are going to do a manipulation on the current state. So to the manipulation on the current state, we are going to use the set contacts. And whenever you want to manipulate the data in the array, you can actually use a map function. So I'm going to take the contacts and then I'm going to map the contacts, and this is going to give me a contact. All right, and this will be an arrow function. And let's do the destructuring of the data that we are receiving from the response. So I'm going to do a destructure of ID, name, and email, and these values will come from response.data. All right, and the next thing we'll do is we are actually going to return first we will make a check that if the contact which we have, the ID of it is equal to the ID which we have it here. If it's equal to ID, then we are going to manipulate that object. So I'm going to use the response dot data. So this is the new object. But if it doesn't matches, then I want to return the old contact, whatever it was. All right. And now if I save it, then I should be able to see. So now everything is okay. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on edit and I'm going to edit it as Nikesh Singh. All right, and now if I click on update, then it should update it immediately. And we have made the API call. So let's go and add a new contact. So I'm going to do a Mike John, and this will become Mike. If I click on add, then I'm able to add a new contact. So that's how you can use AXIOS and you can do the CRUD operations in React. So if I want to delete it, I can delete it. If I want to edit it, I can actually edit it immediately, and everything is happening fine. All right. So I hope this video was very useful, and because this is what you actually do when you are working on a real project. You just need to do one thing. If you have the real APIs, you are going to go to the contacts, and here you need to change your base URL. Once you change the base URL, this code will be able to adapt the APIs and the data from the actual server and will be able to do the CRUD operations. All right, guys, so I'm using the same application code which we built in our last video, React Axios CRUD operations with JSON-SERVER. So in this video, we need to build the search functionality. So we need to have a search bar here in the contact list component. So let's go to the contact list component and add a search bar. So I will go to the contact list component, and inside the contact list component, after this h2 tag, we need to add a search bar. So I'm going to add a div with a class name of UI search. And if you have forgot that we are using Sematic UI for this project, so all the classes are coming from the Sematic UI. And now I'm going to create another div, and I'm going to give a class of UI icon and input. All right, then I'm going to create an input with type of text. I'm going to give a placeholder of search contact, and I'm going to give a class name. So class name of prompt. All right, so now we have the search and we need to have the icon here. So for the icon, I'm going to add a icon here. So I will add the I tag and I'm going to give a class name of search icon. So this is going to give us a icon. All right, so we have made the changes in the JSX, and what we will do is we need to create the state first. So we are using the functional components, so we cannot use directly this dot state or the state. We need to use a React hook. So we will be using a useState. So what I will do, I will click here and I will go to the app.js, and inside the app.js we have our contact state, which is actually the list of contacts we are managing. So here I'm going to create a state. So I'm going to add a constant. So I'm going to add a search term, and I'm going to add the set search term. So this will be a use state, and I will give the value as empty. All right, and then I'm going to pass the search in my contact list component. So I'm going to copy this search and I will go to my component. So this is my contact component. And inside this contact component, I'm going to add a prop as term and I'm going to give the value as search term. And along with this search term, I will also pass a click handler. So whenever you type something in the search bar, I need the value of the search term inside my app.js component so that I can make a filter on the contacts. So for that, I'm going to write a search keyword, and this search keyword will have the search handler. So I'm going to add a search handler here and we will get an error. So I need to define a search handler first. So let's go here and add the search handler. So I'm going to write a constant, this search handler, and this search handler is added. So now we will not get the error. All right. So now we have added the two props here, the term and the keyword. Let's go and access these props in our contact list. And inside the contact list, we already have the props, so we can get all the props here. So if I save it and if we go to the inspect element and let's go to the console, and if I clear the console, so here if I expand this, then I can see the props. So I have the search keyword here and I also have the term. So now we can make use of these props in our contact list. Now we have the props. The next thing we need to do is we need to go to the input, and inside the input we need to add the value. So the value will be the props which we are adding dot the term, and we will also add the on change. So I'm going to add an on change event, and on change event will have the function of get search term. So okay, so let's go and write the get search term now. So I have a get search term, and here I'm going to write the function of get search term. This will be an arrow function. And what we will do, we are going to make use of useRef. So I want to demonstrate how you can use the useRef. So it's not required. You can actually do it here. You can directly write the event.target.value to get the value, but we will make use of the useRef. So I'm going to import the useRef. So I will add the useRef, and we need to initialize this useRef. So I'm going to do the constant input element, and this element is equals to useRef, and the initial value will be the empty value. And now you need to bind this useRef to the input tag. So if we want to bind that, what we can do, we can come here and we can add the ref, and this ref will be equals to the input element. All right, so now we have bind the useRef hook with our input tag. And let's see now if we type anything, something happens or not. So I will go to the search term here, and inside the search term, I'm going to do a console.log, and I will add the input element. All right, and let me inspect and let's see what actually happens. So I go to the console, I clear my console, and if I type anything here, let me type the page. So if I type anything, then you will see that we get an input where we actually added the useRef element. So we get all the information here. So I can actually do the current dot value, and this is actually going to give me the value of whatever I am typing in my input box. I'm again saying that this can also be done with the event.target.value, but we are doing this way. It's just to demonstrate the use of useRef. So now if I refresh it and I clear the console, and now if I type the page, then I should be able to see that whatever I am typing. So now we need to pass whatever we are typing in the search bar to the app.js. So for that, I will just remove this for now. And if I go to app.js, we have added the search keyword as a prop. So let's go and add this prop. So I'm going to use props.search keyword. And inside the search keyword, I'm going to add the input dot current dot value. So whatever value I am typing. All right. So now we have the value. And if I go to the app.js, and in the app.js, we already have the handler. So this handler will actually have a search term as a argument. And then we are going to do a console.log of the search term. So let's see what we get here in the search term. So if I clear this out, I made a mistake. So I'm going to do a console. All right, if I clear this out and now if I type the page, then I am getting the value as the page. So what I'm going to do, we will take the search term and we will actually set the state. So we have already taken a state of search term and set search term. So we need to set this state. So I'm going to remove this and I'm going to do a set search term. And inside this, I'm going to add the search term. All right, so now we have got our search term and now we actually need to filter the results based on this search term. So let me add one more state. So I'm going to add one more state and this state will be the search results and it will be set search results. And the initial value of this state will be an empty array. So I'm going to add an empty array here. And here what we will do is we will make a check. So if our search term is not equal to empty, then what we are going to do, we are actually going to filter out the results. So I'm going to take the filtered result into a new constant. So I'm going to add a constant here and this will be the new contact list. And I'm going to filter the contacts dot filter, and on the filters I'm going to get my contact back. All right, this will be an arrow function and we need to return the contact which actually matches the criteria. So each of our contact is a JavaScript object. So if I go to a network tab and if I click on any of the contact, if I click on this preview, then you will see that each of our contact is a JavaScript object and we need to make a search only on the values of these objects. Like I want to make a search on contact.name and I want to make a search on contact.email. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to use a object.values and this is going to give me the values of the contact. So if I actually do a console log here, so let me do a console.log so that we can see what we are getting here. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to go to the console and I will clear this out. So let me remove a console log from here so that we don't get all the logs. All right, so now I have removed it and now if I actually type something, so I'm going to type something and you will see that what we actually get. So we get this object.values and these values are only the values, not the key of the object. So now we need to make a search on this values. So this is an array. So what I'm going to do, I am actually going to add a join here. So we can join all the values. So if I now type the page, then I get this complete value. And now this is like a string. So we can make a search on this string. So I'm going to remove this now. And on this join, let's change it to lower so that all the values first will be converted to a lower case. And then we are going to do an includes. So if I do includes and we will make an include on the search term, that the search term is included in this string or not. So I'm going to add here the search term dot and we will make a lowercase here as well. So I made a mistake here. So this will become to lower. All right. And now this string becomes object.values. We get the contact, we make the join on the contact, we make it to a lowercase, and then we check that this is included in the search term or not. If it's included, then it's going to return a true. So let me return this. So I'm going to return this. So once we get this new contact list, we need to update the state of the search results. So now we have filtered out the results and let's set the state, set state of search results. And this state will be the new contact list. But if this search term is actually equals to empty, then in that case, what we are going to do, we are going to set this search results with our actual contacts. So this will be the actual contacts. All right. And now we have made the search. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to apply this search results in our contact list. So let's go to the contact list. So where is the contact list? So this is our contact list. And in our contact list, initially we were passing the contacts, but now we have to make a condition. And that condition will be that if my search term, so search term and the length of the search term is less than 1, then I need to pass the contacts. But if it's not less than 1, that means I am typing something in my search bar, and in that case I need to pass my search results. So this will become search results. All right, and now let's give a try. So I'm going to remove this and I'm going to refresh the page. And now if I want to search something, I'm going to type the page and I'm able to search. If I type in caps lock, then I'm still able to search. If I type the Outlook to check that anyone has an Outlook email, then I can still search. And if I type some gibberish, then there is no results. So there is no results. For that, what we can do, we can actually go to the contact list, and inside the contact list we have this render. So here we can actually do that if the render dot length is greater than 0. If it's true, then it should have the render contact list. But if it's false, then we need to show that no contacts available. All right, we have saved it, and now we can try. If we type some gibberish, we can see no contacts available. And if we have the contacts, we can actually do the contacts. And the rest of the functionality which we built, the add contacts. So let me add a new contact at Brad Bay, and this will be bay@test.com. And if I click on the add, then I should be able to see the Brad. If I want to update it from Brad Bay 123, then I should be able to update it. If I want to delete it, I can delete it. All this functionality is working. So that's all I have in this video. I know it's a long video, but we learned a lot of React. So I hope you liked the video. A thumbs up is appreciated. You can also connect with me via Facebook or Instagram. I will add the links in the description below. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. And thank you. Thanks for watching.